Can you imagine being scared to be in your own home? If you can't, consider yourself lucky to not be part of the over 6 million women that are. I believe that domestic abuse in the US has escalated and it's become a bigger problem than people are actually led to believe. And I'm sure that someone you've known or maybe even yourself has been in this situation. My question to you is, did you do anything about it? You should always be aware of the signs leading up to abuse in a relationship. And if you're in this situation, I'm urging you to get out now before it's too late. And many women, they tend to say, oh, this can't happen to me. But personal testimony indicates that any female, regardless of her class or race, can become a victim of domestic abuse. And Time magazine states that approximately 2,000 to 4,000 women are beaten to death annually, and that battery is the single major cause of injury to women. It's more significant than auto accidents, rapes, or muggings. So how come you always hear about all those things, on the news that happen to women, but you don't ever hear about domestic abuse? And I'll tell you why. That women, they're scared. Domestic abuse is often referred to as a silent crime. And, women are usually led to believe that they're getting abused because they deserve it. And no one deserves to be abused. It may be hard to recognize if you're in an abusive relationship because it can take many forms, including emotional, it can be sexual, it can be physical violence, and even threats of abuse are considered signs leading up. So some relationships, they're clearly abusive from the onset, but there's many that are not easy to identify at first because usually it gets worse over time when he gets more comfortable with you in the situations. So some signs that to help you see if you are involved in that type of relationship are he may control your everyday life and situations. He won't let you do things. He tries to keep you from your friends or your family. He can threaten you with violence if you don't do what he says, or even if you do what he says, he could still threaten. And then he may blame you for his violent behavior. So after he was done abusing you, he'll say, you deserved it or something like that. We need to break the violent cycle of abuse. There is a pattern to it, and you can ask yourself, do you recognize this pattern? Usually it's your abuser, he'll threaten violence, and then your abuser strikes. Your abuser apologizes and promises to change. He may offer gifts, things like that, and then the cycle repeats itself. So the only way to break the cycle of domestic abuse is to take action, and the sooner the better. I would like to tell you a story of a 30-year-old woman. Her name is Barbara, and she's from South Hadley, Massachusetts. She tells Time magazine that she was first beaten by her husband when she was pregnant. She goes on to tell them that one summer when her husband was, pissed off, he threw a plate across the table at her, and his aim was off. It shattered against the wall, and it struck their 4-year-old daughter in the face. The little girl was blinded in one eye. And this type of abuse doesn't only affect the woman. In this case, it actually blinded the little girl. And Time magazine also reveals that in 13% of wife abuse cases, children have also been assaulted. So this woman, among many others, have one thing in common. They didn't leave. This is why it is so important to recognize the signs leading up to abuse and to take action and be brave enough to leave the situation. You can start by telling someone about the abuse, whether it's a friend, a loved one, even your healthcare provider, or other, close contact that you have. I know at first you might find it hard to talk about the abuse, but you'll also likely feel relief and receive much needed support. There are also many shelters for battered women. There's approximately 800 in the country as of right now. So There's plenty, places that you could go, but unfortunately, according to the Deputy City Attorney, Susan Kaplan, she states of our 5,000 domestic abuse cases that cross our desk each year, half of the victims want to drop the charges. If this affects you, please do not be the half that wants to drop the charges. You've already done the hardest part. You've gotten out there and you've admitted and you've actually filed the charges. So don't back out after you've already gone that far. There's way too many people out there that actually get away with this terrible crime. So as often as violent acts, I guess, are belittled in a relationship, can you imagine how often that verbal abuse gets overlooked? As harmless as it may seem, it often leaves a lasting scar on the person. So if your significant other tells you things such as, you're not good enough to do this or that, or he's consistently telling you that you're stupid, are huge red flags that you need to be aware of. And so I urge you, please don't give up faith. There is help for you. You do not have to go through this anymore. And as I mentioned earlier, you can reach out to someone you trust and just talk about it. There are plenty of places you can go to get away, such as, the shelters for the battered women. And if you're still too scared to leave, there is another option, and you can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline. They can be reached at 1-800-799-SAFE. And it is, at the very least, you can talk to someone who is actually trained and capable of handling situations such as these. So please stop being the victim. You don't deserve it. Thank you.